Beneath the calm hum of Shreveport and Birmingham streets, shadows of violence quietly brood. A Facebook live stream ending in gunfire. A police officer ambushed outside home. A car crash masking a triple homicide. And a quiet morning shattered by a home invasion. Each scene soaked in blood and disbelief. From confessions of guilt to courtroom tears, the sentences stretch across decades, yet no verdict can return the lives lost to rage and betrayal. And this is, Inside, Shreveport and Birmingham's darkest black killers, shocking murders, and true crime documentary. Welcome back to Justice Reversed, where real crimes meet real justice. Number 1. Jonathan Robinson. On an April morning in 2018, a quiet neighborhood in Shreveport, Louisiana, became the stage for a crime that shocked America. Jonathan Robinson, 36 years old, had spent the early hours of April 12 meticulously planning the murder of his former girlfriend, Renita Nunu Williams, a 27-year-old mother of 3. Investigators later revealed that Robinson told them he woke that morning with a single purpose: to kill Renita and provoke a shootout with police. He retrieved a rifle hidden at his aunt's house for 3 years, bought 40 rounds of ammunition at a pawn shop, and stopped briefly at a casino to clear his mind. His next stop was Williams' home on Natalie Street. He kicked in the door, took her hostage, and forced her to begin a Facebook Live broadcast that would immortalize the horror. In the live video, Renita sat terrified before the camera while Robinson paced behind her. He ordered her to apologize to his new girlfriend in Houston for mocking her online. His words were chilling. "Everybody want to be famous. I'm gonna make you famous." Seconds later, gunfire erupted. Neighbors called police as the screen shook violently and 6 shots echoed through the stream. "Stop, Jonathan," were Renita's final words before the phone hit the floor, and 3 more gunshots rang out. Officers arrived within minutes, triggering an 80-minute standoff. Robinson opened fire on 8 police officers, discharging nearly 30 rounds. CPL. Robert Antrekin was struck in the wrist but survived. Robinson eventually ran out of ammunition and surrendered. Inside, police found Renita gravely wounded. She died shortly after arriving at the hospital. The investigation, led by Shreveport Police Sergeant Jeff Brown, confirmed that the killing was deliberate. During interrogation, Robinson freely confessed. When detectives informed him he'd face a second-degree murder charge, he insisted, "No, it was first degree. I planned it." At his preliminary hearing, Detective Brown's recounting of the crime caused Robinson to collapse in tears, shackles clanging against the floor. Judge Ramona Emanuel ruled there was probable cause for first-degree murder, and a grand jury later returned that indictment. In January 2019, Robinson pled guilty to first-degree murder, accepting a life sentence without parole to avoid the death penalty. As he stood before the court, visibly trembling, he turned to Renita's mother, Anita Williams, and said, "I'm so sorry for what I did. I hope one day you forgive me." The case drew widespread attention across U.S. media, symbolizing the intersection of domestic violence and social media exhibitionism. The courtroom scenes, the haunting video, and the senseless death of a young mother left the community shattered. This tragedy stands as a warning: never ignore threats of violence from a partner, never underestimate the escalation of online humiliation into real harm, and always report warning signs to authorities before they turn fatal. Even behind bars, Robinson's story echoes across true crime channels, a grim reminder that fame sought through violence always ends the same way, in silence and regret. Before moving on, if this truth hits you, press hype stand with the forgotten, amplify justice, and make sure silence never buries the voices of the lost. Number 2. Tre'veon Demarcus Anderson, Lawrence Guidel Pierre II, and Glenn Montreal Frierson. The night was calm, the kind of silence that settles before tragedy leaves its mark. Officer Shateri Ellis Payne, a 22-year-old rookie with the Shreveport Police Department, had just 7 weeks earlier walked proudly across the graduation stage of the police academy. On the 9th of January 2019, she put on her uniform, preparing for her patrol shift. Outside her home in the Caddo Heights neighborhood, as she approached her car, gunfire broke the stillness. 4 bullets struck her, 1 to the head, ending her life instantly. Inside the home, her live-in boyfriend, Tre'veon Demarcus Anderson, called 911. He told dispatchers he had heard gunshots, ran outside, and fired at an unknown figure, wearing all white. His voice, calm yet calculated, painted himself as the desperate witness. Police arrived quickly, finding Officer Payne lifeless beside her patrol car. Anderson's story initially appeared plausible. Detectives even released him after his first interview. But inconsistencies surfaced. Investigators from the Shreveport Police Department began retracing the events of that night. They found no evidence of an intruder. Surveillance footage, phone records, and text messages between Anderson and his cousin, Lawrence Guidel Pierre II, revealed a far darker truth. Prosecutors later proved that Anderson planned the murder after discovering Payne intended to leave him. She had already placed a deposit on a new apartment. In messages, Anderson and Pierre discussed her movements, timing, and even surveillance of her final steps. Days later, detectives uncovered a hidden .40 caliber handgun, the murder weapon, linked to Anderson through ballistics testing. A third cousin, Glenn Montreal Frierson, admitted helping conceal the gun. The so-called search for a mysterious gunman collapsed when police realized the killer lived under the same roof as the victim. On the 16th of January 2019, Anderson, Pierre, and Frierson were arrested for second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. The courtroom in Caddo Parish was filled when the verdicts came years later. Pierre, 24, accepted a plea deal, receiving life in prison. Frierson, 41, was acquitted after the jury found insufficient evidence of direct involvement. On the 20th of April 2022, a jury convicted Anderson on all counts. Judge John D. Mosley Jr. delivered the sentence on June 3, life in prison without parole, plus 30 consecutive years. At the hearing, Payne's mother, Lakeitha Nash Hudson, broke down. "This has destroyed our family," she said. "My granddaughter lost both her parents in one night." Shreveport Police Chief Ben Raymond called the killing senseless and tragic. Louisiana Governor John Bell Edwards offered condolences, praising Payne's dedication to service. Across the state, law enforcement officers wore black mourning bands in solidarity. From the grief, 3 lessons emerged: never ignore escalating control in relationships, never dismiss emotional manipulation as harmless, and always report red flags before they become irreversible. Tragedies like this remind us that violence often hides in plain sight until it is too late. In the end, Officer Payne's badge lay folded beside an American flag, symbolizing service cut short and love betrayed. Justice delivered, yet silence remains her only witness. Number 3. Grover Cannon. The quiet neighborhood of Queensboro in Shreveport, Louisiana, was interrupted by tragedy on the 5th of August 2015. That evening, Officer Thomas LaValle, 29 years old and a 4-year veteran of the Shreveport Police Department, responded to a call about a suspicious person. It was a routine duty, the kind he had handled hundreds of times before. The address led him to a small house on Del Rio Street, the home of Grover Cannon's sister. Neighbors told LaValle that the man inside was wanted for attempted murder. The officer entered the house alone, unaware of the danger waiting inside. Seconds later, multiple gunshots echoed through the quiet block. Prosecutors later revealed that Grover Cannon, then 27, ambushed the officer and continued firing as LaValle lay bleeding, even using the officer's own weapon to deliver fatal shots. Evidence showed that 14 shell casings came from LaValle's missing .40 caliber service gun, and a 9mm casing matched the weapon used in an earlier shooting that Cannon was already wanted for. Officer LaValle was rushed to University Health Hospital but died shortly after arrival. What followed was one of the largest manhunts in Shreveport's history. Police Chief Willie Shaw called Cannon a coward who shot and ran, vowing to scour the earth to find him. State Police, USS Marshals, and the FBI joined the search. Less than 24 hours later, officers discovered Cannon hiding in a shed on Jackson Street, just blocks from the crime scene. A 9mm handgun was recovered nearby, and 2 bullets were reportedly found in his pocket. Cannon denied owning the gun, claiming police had planted evidence, but forensic testing linked the weapon to the earlier attempted murder case. The capital murder trial faced multiple delays and was eventually moved to Baton Rouge to ensure a fair jury. In court, Cannon clashed with his attorney over the defense strategy. He wanted to claim total innocence, accusing police of framing him, while his lawyer argued self-defense. Jurors watched Cannon write questions to his attorney on yellow paper, a sign of the deep rift between them. When he took the stand, Cannon insisted, "I didn't shoot that man, they all lied." On the 20th of November 2019, after only 2 hours of deliberation, the jury found Cannon guilty of first-degree murder. During the penalty phase, jurors could not unanimously agree on the death penalty, resulting in an automatic life sentence without parole. In January 2020, Judge Ramona Emanuel imposed the sentence. Officer LaValle's mother, Jackie, tearfully said, "Every night I pray to be taken, just to be with Thomas again." The city of Shreveport mourned its fallen officer. A bridge in Bossier Parish now bears his name, the Officer Thomas LaValle Memorial Bridge. From this tragedy come lessons that echo beyond one city. No call is ever routine, trust between communities and law enforcement must remain vigilant, and mental instability mixed with violence destroys lives on both sides. A life lost, another confined, and a community forever marked by the sound of 14 gunshots. Number 4. Shameka Dollzetta Ellis. The summer heat shimmered over Southern Avenue in Shreveport, Louisiana, moments before chaos unfolded in broad daylight. On the 16th of July 2019, two women, both 21 years old, crossed paths for the last time. Shameka Dollzetta Ellis, from Shreveport, and Luquandalyn Jaleese Hargrove, from Minden, were entangled in a volatile love triangle. Their argument, fueled by jealousy and betrayal, began as shouting near Dudley Drive and quickly escalated into violence. Witnesses said one woman grabbed a stick and struck an SUV as tensions boiled over. When Hargrove turned to walk away, the fight appeared finished. But Ellis had already climbed into her black Ford Expedition. At 12:41 p.m., witnesses saw the SUV accelerate toward Hargrove. The vehicle jumped the curb, struck her, and crushed her against the wall of a Circle K office building. The impact was so violent that it shattered the glass door and pinned Hargrove under the front tire. Screams echoed through the neighborhood as Ellis stepped out holding a toddler, her own child, before fleeing the scene. Paramedics pronounced Hargrove dead where she fell. Shreveport police rushed to secure the chaotic scene. Detective Marcus Hines described it as a senseless confrontation turned deadly. Patrol officers searched the area, following witness accounts. Within 30 minutes, at 1 p.m., Ellis was located half a mile away on Elmwood Street. She was walking quickly, the small child still in her arms. Officers detained her without resistance. The toddler was unharmed and taken for evaluation before being released to family members. Ellis was booked into the city jail at 5:18 p.m. for one count of second-degree murder, her bond set at $500,000. Investigators learned an unnamed male passenger had been inside the Expedition when Hargrove was run down, though no charges were filed against him. Detectives pieced together the argument, the chase, and the moment Ellis veered off the roadway. Surveillance footage supported eyewitness statements that the act was intentional. A year later, on the 3rd of September 2020, Ellis appeared before Caddo District Judge John D. Mosley, Jr. Wearing a plain jumpsuit, she entered a guilty plea to manslaughter as part of a deal negotiated by her attorney, Mary Harried. Her voice shook when she whispered, "Guilty." The judge accepted the plea and sentenced her to 40 years in prison at hard labor. The victim's family, present in the courtroom, agreed with the resolution. Hargrove's relatives embraced as the sentence was read, tears falling quietly. 3 days after the killing, hundreds gathered for a balloon release vigil. Amid the mourning, witnesses questioned the police response time, saying earlier intervention might have saved her life. From this tragedy came enduring lessons: never let pride dictate reaction, never confront emotional rivals in anger, and never ignore the danger signs when tempers rise beyond reason. Jealousy moves faster than judgment, and it destroys just as quickly. When the courtroom fell silent, the sound of that SUV lingered in memory, a reminder that rage, once set in motion, cannot be reversed. Number 5. Melvin Charles Morris and Cameron DeJuan Blanding. The morning light had barely touched the houses on Dogwood Lane when gunfire shattered the quiet of Birmingham. It was the 6th of February 2020, just after 6:30 a.m., when two armed men broke into the home of 27-year-old Devonta Reddick and his pregnant girlfriend, 25-year-old Sabria Baylor. Inside the small house, their 3-year-old son slept soundly in the next room. The intruders, later identified as Melvin Charles Morris and Cameron DeJuan Blanding, stormed through the door demanding money. Reddick lunged forward to protect his family, shouting for Baylor to grab their child. Within seconds, the home turned into a firefight. Baylor grabbed a pistol, firing back as bullets tore through the hallway. One shot struck her leg, but she continued shooting. Reddick collapsed near the front door, mortally wounded. "Where that be at?" A voice yelled as one of the attackers moved toward the bedroom. Baylor, bleeding and terrified, barricaded herself and her son behind the door. When a shadow appeared in the doorway, she returned fire again, striking Morris in the neck. The men fled, leaving a trail of blood behind. Despite her injuries, Baylor ran across the street to her grandparents' house, collapsing on the porch. Police and paramedics arrived minutes later to find Riddick lifeless in the yard. Baylor survived her wounds and, astonishingly, gave birth to her baby the next day. The Birmingham Police Department launched an intensive investigation. Detectives followed ballistic evidence and traced it to a string of prior armed robberies. 6 months later, in August 2020, U.S. Marshals captured 41-year-old Morris in Nashville, Tennessee. He was extradited to Alabama and charged with capital murder and attempted murder. 3 months later, 28-year-old Blanding was also arrested in Birmingham and charged as an accomplice. Both were held without bond in Jefferson County Jail. In July 2025, a Jefferson County jury found Morris guilty of felony murder and first-degree assault. At his sentencing that October, Judge Stephen Wallace invoked Alabama's habitual offender law, sentencing him to 2 consecutive life terms. Standing in court, Baylor faced a man who had shattered her life. "He laughed during the trial," she said. "He stared at me with no remorse, he laughed in our faces." Prosecutors described Morris as cold and unrepentant. The victim's sister, Carlisha Reddick, called Devonta a good man who always kept our family together. As the judge read the sentence, Morris showed no emotion, his expression fixed as deputies led him away. The courtroom was heavy with silence, but for the family, justice had been served. Blanding's trial is scheduled for June 2026. The community, stunned by the brutality, rallied around Baylor, calling her survival a miracle born of courage. From this tragedy emerged lasting lessons: always reinforce home security, never underestimate desperation behind violent crime, and remember that courage and vigilance can mean the difference between life and death. As the years pass, the memory of that morning remains, a reminder that evil can break through any door, but resilience can still fight its way out. Number 6. Jacorrian McGregor. It was an ordinary summer evening in Birmingham until a single text message revealed the truth behind a triple homicide. On the 13th of July 2024, police responded to what appeared to be a car crash in the Echo Highlands neighborhood. The blue Nissan Maxima had slammed into a yard, riddled with bullet holes. Inside were 3 victims: 28-year-old Arkeakia Berry, her son Landon Brooks, and her boyfriend, 28-year-old Eric Ashley Jr. All 3 had been shot multiple times. Berry was found slumped over the steering wheel, her phone still in her hand. Moments before she died, she sent one final message to a friend, a single word: Jaco. It was the nickname of the man police would soon identify as the killer. 25-year-old Jacorrian McGregor. Detectives quickly pieced together the timeline. At 5 p.m., neighbors reported hearing gunshots followed by screeching tires. Surveillance cameras captured a stolen green Kia pulling up beside Berry's car at 5:07 p.m. 3 minutes later, the Kia sped away, leaving chaos behind. Investigators recovered between 20 and 30 shell casings scattered across the street. Eric Ashley had managed to move the car a short distance before losing control and crashing. His phone showed a call placed to a contact saved as Jaco at 5:09 p.m., the same minute Berry sent her dying text. The Birmingham Police Department's homicide unit, led by Detective Jarvelius Tolliver, began following digital leads. McGregor's phone records showed friends messaging him immediately after the killings: "Lay low. Stay out of sight." The stolen Kia was later found burned, an apparent attempt to destroy evidence. Officers also learned that McGregor had known Berry and Ashley personally, though the motive remains unclear. 7 months later, in February 2025, U.S. Marshals and Birmingham's crime reduction team located McGregor hiding in the Kilo Springs area. Inside his residence, investigators found multiple firearms and narcotics. He was arrested without incident and charged with 3 counts of capital murder. At his April 2025 preliminary hearing, Detective Tolliver testified about the crucial text message, the ballistic evidence, and the digital trail that tied McGregor to the scene. Jefferson County District Judge William Bell ruled there was probable cause to proceed to a grand jury. McGregor remains in the Jefferson County Jail without bond, awaiting trial. The community's reaction was one of disbelief and grief. "She was the kind of mother every child deserves," said her cousin, Anaya Berry. Landon's football coach, Keldrick Marsh, struggled to tell his team of 5-year-olds that their friend would never return. Even police officers expressed heartbreak. Sergeant Truman Fitzgerald admitted, "A homicide involving a child affects you differently. It changes you." This tragedy leaves haunting lessons. Never ignore warning signs in strained relationships, always trust instincts when danger feels near, and never underestimate how quickly violence can escalate from personal conflict. As the city still searches for answers, one message remains etched in memory, 5 letters typed in desperation that turned silence into evidence and grief into justice. Number 7. Treona McCarter, Brian Ross, Demaria Johnson, and James LeClaire. The early spring air in Shreveport carried a quiet tension on the 5th of April 2020 before an encounter between police and a man in distress turned fatal. That man was 44-year-old Tommy McLaughlin Jr., a black resident known to suffer from mental illness. His sister, Laquita McLaughlin, had called police earlier that day seeking help to have him committed. Officers told her they could only act if he posed an immediate threat. Hours later, that call for help would become the start of a tragedy. McLaughlin's first interaction with police came when officers found him behaving erratically in the back of a stranger's truck. Body camera audio captured one officer saying, "There's clearly something wrong with him." Officer Treona McCarter added that he needed to be committed. The driver chose not to press charges, and the officers left. Less than 2 hours later, McLaughlin appeared at a home nearby, blocking a woman's driveway and entering her house. The homeowner fought him off and called police. When officers arrived, including McCarter, Brian Ross, Demaria Johnson, and James LeClaire, McLaughlin resisted arrest. Witnesses and video footage showed a violent struggle, officers using tasers, chemical spray, and batons as they dragged him to the ground. One bystander's cell phone recorded the fight for more than 4 minutes, with officers striking McLaughlin repeatedly. Prosecutors later argued that the officers sat on him, beat his legs with a baton, and left him handcuffed in a patrol car for nearly 50 minutes before realizing he was unresponsive. Defense attorneys countered that McLaughlin had attacked them first, stabbing one officer with a pen, breaking another's finger, and spitting in their faces. McLaughlin was eventually transported to the hospital but pronounced dead within an hour. The coroner initially listed his death as the result of a heart condition and excited delirium, calling it possibly preventable. A second forensic pathologist, Dr. Alicia Wilson, ruled the death a homicide caused by the struggle itself. The police department delayed submitting its report for 7 weeks, and the district attorney found it missing vital information. After video evidence surfaced, the 4 officers were placed on leave and later indicted for negligent homicide and malfeasance in office. The trial began in June 2022. All 4 officers waived their right to a jury, leaving the verdict to Judge Chris Victory. Prosecutors argued excessive force and medical neglect. The defense claimed the state could not prove causation. On the 17th of June 2022, Judge Victory ruled that the evidence was insufficient and acquitted all 4 officers. For McLaughlin's family, the verdict was devastating. His sister said she had lost faith in those meant to protect us. The case fueled protests across Shreveport in the wake of George Floyd's death, calling for stronger oversight in policing. From this tragedy emerged painful lessons: treat every mental health crisis as a medical emergency, ensure accountability in use of force cases, and remember that delayed help can turn restraint into death. In the end, justice remained divided, a life lost in silence, while the city's trust fractured beyond repair. Number 8. Janiah Hendrix, Justin Hendrix, Taylor McLeod, and Aokoria Dene Woods. The night of the 20th of August 2024 began with music and laughter outside the Monarch Ridge Apartments in Birmingham, but it ended in chaos streamed live across social media. At 10 p.m., 21-year-old Asia Alice Poole stood in the parking lot, unaware that a fight arranged online would become her final moments. Videos later recovered by investigators showed her arguing with 19-year-old Janiah Hendrix. What started as a physical confrontation over a guy, police said, quickly escalated. The 2 women wrestled on the hood of a car while friends recorded on their phones. When bystanders pulled them apart, Poole turned toward the apartment breezeway, saying she didn't want to fight anymore. Moments later, witnesses said, it turned into an ambush. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions. Detectives later estimated that 168 bullets were fired in less than a minute. Surveillance footage and social media videos captured flashes of gunfire from both pistols and assault-style weapons. Poole was struck and fell instantly. Her best friend, a man standing beside her, was hit in the leg but survived. Police arriving at the scene found shattered car windows, bullet holes in apartment walls, and terrified residents hiding behind doors. Investigators quickly linked the suspects to what witnesses called a coordinated attack. The Birmingham Police Department pieced together footage from bystanders and local cameras that were not connected to the city's real-time crime center. The digital evidence revealed that several individuals were armed and that one of the weapons was modified with a Glock switch, converting it into a fully automatic machine gun. Within days, police arrested 5 people. Among them were 20-year-old Justin Hendrix, 22-year-old Taylor McLeod, and 20-year-old Jacorrian McGregor Woods, all charged with intentional murder and attempted murder. Hendrix and McLeod were denied bond. Woods, who later claimed mental illness, was granted a $250,000 bond. 19-year-old Tre'veon Hendrix faced separate charges for stealing Poole's car shortly after the shooting. In court, defense attorneys argued that their clients acted in self-defense, claiming that someone in the breezeway fired first. Detective testimony contradicted this, noting that no shell casings were found in that area. The case remains in pretrial proceedings, but prosecutors maintain that the killing was deliberate and coordinated. The community was left shaken. A neighbor said quietly, "That young woman left behind a 4-year-old child. Now he has no mother." Residents of the complex described a growing fear of gun violence, saying, "We're afraid of our own youth now." Police Chief Scott Thurman called the shooting a terrifying example of what happens when social media disputes turn deadly. From this tragedy come urgent lessons: never underestimate how fast online conflict can escalate, never attend violent meetups fueled by ego or pride, and always step away when a situation feels explosive. Your life is worth more than proving a point. The city of Birmingham continues to search for peace, yet the sound of that night still echoes, a reminder that anger broadcast online can end in silence offline. In every corner of Shreveport and Birmingham, behind every name we've uncovered tonight, lies a warning: violence always begins quietly, and it never ends cleanly. If you believe stories like these need to be told, don't let them fade into the noise. Subscribe to Justice Reversed, tap that notification bell, and join us as we continue to expose the darkest crimes buried beneath America's calmest streets. Each click keeps their stories alive and reminds the world that silence protects no one.